Hello and welcome to this session of Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. My name is Natashya Tiro, and today I am delighted to be having a discussion about tech and tech careers with interviewee Shaima Ghafoor, founder and commercial head of Dukkan Alfreej. With over 10 years of experience in technology and digital media, Shaima's passion in the development of the EMEA region has led her to numerous successes in her professional and voluntary career. She has wide experience as commercial head and co-founder of Genbu AI, MEA partnerships lead at Booking.com, and product sales specialist at Yahoo. Shaima also managed the Girls in Tech Dubai chapter, given lectures at several prominent universities around the world on topics on growth hacking, marketing optimization, and digital media. And she also has mentored startups towards growth. We will get to know more about Shaima through Talking Tech, which is a series celebrating girls and women in tech, which is being recorded around the world between Girls in ICT Day 2020 and Girls in ICT Day 2022. Girls in ICT Day is an international day marked on the fourth Thursday of each April. The objective is to help create a global environment that encourages young women to consider studies and careers in the field of ICT, information and communication technology. The Talking Tech series is brought to you by the ITU, UNICC, and the Office of the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, and is in support of Equals, the global partnership for gender equality in the digital age. Well, now let's move on to the most exciting part. Hi, Shaima, and thank you for joining me today. How are you?
Hi, Natasha. How are you? And a warm welcome from sunny Dubai.
I'm great too here in sunny Jakarta. It's really nice to have you here. Well, to kick things off, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit to our audience and talking about what your recent job is about?
Sure. You did a great job with the intro, and thank you for that. So my name is obviously Shaima. I'm actually half Kuwaiti, half Egyptian. I'm born and raised true and proud Arab. I currently live in Dubai. A lot of people ask me how I got into technology and really what led me to where I am today. It really started with growing up in the 80s in Kuwait. As a lot of people who grew up in the Middle East would know, we tend to grow up with devices that our grandparents and our parents inherited from their parents. So I spent a lot of hours sitting on the floor, listening to records or watching movies off of VHS tapes. And every time I traveled for the summer or any family trip, I used to pick up a new device, and that at the time it used to be a tape or a CD player and so forth. And little by little, I would get exposed to new innovations outside the analog world. As a young child, I was always fascinated with devices. I was always fascinated with the speed and velocity a lot of technology companies were innovating, and I think those were the early days of planting that seed in my head. One of my early demands as a child, when my father wanted me to learn how to play piano or go to ballet class, I asked him for a gateway computer. I'm not so sure why I was particularly interested in the gateway computer. I think there were funky ads back in the day around it, if anyone remembers what that was. And he got me my first gateway computer. It must have been 1996. And I spent countless of hours just playing on the computer. And mind you, it wasn't even connected to the internet at the time. It was just drawing circles on the previous version of what PowerPoint looked like, or typing letters on the previous version of Word. So you can imagine a young Shaima at the time playing with a computer. And that's how I got into technology as a child.
Well, that's a really interesting story hearing from how technology involved in the 80s, in the 90s. Well, that's really interesting. I wasn't even born at that moment yet, but that's really fascinating. Well, hearing your wonderful journey, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and was really inspired, which makes me curious about what do you like best about your job?
If you look into my journey over the years, I moved around a lot. My initial career was actually in advertising. This was circa 2010. And I worked at an ad agency, which at the time was still dabbling in something called social media. I spent a couple of years just getting the hang of what social media is and what advertising looks like. And eventually I moved into a media company and a publisher, which was Yahoo, and spent a good chunk of the decade with Yahoo. After that, I moved into e-commerce with Booking.com. And over the course of the years, one of the things that I really loved about my journey and my job is the capability of moving into a variety of different industries, working with the best talent all over the world, and somehow having a link to my growth and development across my journey. I don't see my job or my career being fixated in one domain, in one industry. That's what's really great about having a role or a job in technology is you can be quite flexible to move around. I think the key thing to outline here is you get to work with the best talent from all over the world. I'll use Booking.com, for example. Our team was based in Amsterdam. However, we had 20 team members all over the world, and I got to work with people all the way from Australia down to Brazil. So that was probably the most fascinating and exciting thing about my job.
Oh, that's really awesome. You are having a really wide connections all over the world and get the chance to actually have a job with so many different people with different backgrounds. And yeah, I really think it's really fascinating to explore more about technology. And I'm just curious, through your experience, can you share like an example of things you have done in or with tech that you are particularly proud of?
I'd like to talk about two interesting, I guess, highlights from my career. And I can't say this was something I'm proud of myself, but just generally the teams that I worked with and the companies that I worked for. In 2011, when I was at Yahoo, the concept of digital advertising or online advertising was nascent at the time. And we were a small company based out of Dubai, the advertising unit, working closely with multiple brands and media agencies, just trying to educate them on what digital marketing is and why digital marketing was going to be quite impactful for their bottom lines and branding. You have to remember this was over 10 years ago. Most of the media budget used to be allocated to TV spends, let alone billboards and radio. We spent a couple of years aggressively trying to educate the market on digital media. And in a span of 5 to 7 years later, you can see the whole industry shift their spends from offline to online. And I think in a region like the Middle East, companies at the time, such as Yahoo, and this was prior Facebook entering the market, did a lot of work educating the market about digital media. So I have to say that was probably one of the highlights of my early days of the career. And eventually when I moved into Booking.com, I was the first person on the ground for my department. And in a span of a couple of years, I managed to close a lot of deals, which captured a high market share, as well as grow the team on the ground to be one of the strongest salespeople in the region, to about 5 people. So these are, I would say, 2 key highlights for my career.
Oh, that's really impressive. And like to have the experience of the shift of the era where we moved to digital marketing era is really crazy brilliant. Well, I know that working in ICT jobs or projects like that definitely come with challenge, right? And I would like to know, what is your biggest challenge along the way and how did you overcome them?
This is an interesting question. I mean, it can also be a two-sided question. As a woman, I can tell you I did continue to challenge be challenged being a successful woman in the region in the early days. It was an interesting time where a lot of the head of sales and department heads were always men. And the reason men were hired in the early days is because there was the misconception that men were better sales leaders or better heads for the departments, and they were the best figures to put in front of clients and in front of the public. However, we have seen the region aggressively shift towards promoting women and female empowerment. I can't fairly say that I struggled, but I did spend a lot of time working with other women to push and instill the thoughts of empowering women in the region.
That's really wonderful. I mean, being probably in those days, the dominance of the worker was man, and it's just wonderful to see you thrive among everybody. And since this series is about girls and women in technology, do you have any career and or tech advice for girls and younger women in tech?
Technology is an industry that from its early days has been structured and built to empower and support women. It's an industry that women should not shy out of in comparison to legacy industries. A lot of women have the misconception that it's a domain that may not support them as mothers or may not support them as supporters of their families. Whereas in fact, you'd be surprised how a lot of tech companies today do provide that platform to support their development and growth while being a great mom. It was the tech companies that first instilled, especially in the region, 6 months paternity leave, for example. We had that at Yahoo back in 2000, I believe it was 13 or 14. A lot of women who are interested in pursuing careers in technology, I encourage you to trial it. You'd be surprised by the support you can get from these companies. And moreover, for a lot of women who have been in this industry for a while, I would also recommend to pass on a lot of the knowledge and the education that you gain to younger women and be that inspirational role model to help attract more talent into the industry. At the end of the day, women are 50% of consumers, they're 50% of decision makers. It would be great to start seeing the workforce reflective of the population.
Oh, that's really wonderful answers, and we have a lot of we gain a lot of insights from what you have just explained. And well, I've seen your experience in digital media and grocery stores, and as one of the co-founder of Dukkan Alfreej, I'm really interested to ask you this. Can you explain more about Dukkan Alfreej? Since actually I've been thinking that maybe we are a match as interviewer and interviewee, since I remember that I wrote an essay for this volunteer program stating that my long-term goal was to build a digital eco-friendly grocery store all over Indonesia, which utilize ICT from its strategic to operational activities. And I noticed that Dukkan Alfreej actually one of your side businesses, which is a global and digital grocery. So basically, your current business is really interesting for me, and it's kind of like mirroring my future aspirations. So can you explain a little bit more about Dukkan Alfreej?
Yeah, absolutely. Entrepreneurship was something I've always a dream to attain, and I had a Excel sheet of life goals and timelines on when I want to achieve it. And being an entrepreneur was something I actually assigned for myself at 40 or 45. Just to let you know, I'm 36 at the moment, and at the time when I was building my goals and the timelines of achieving them, the assumption was by 40 or 45, I would have gained all the life experience and the work experience at corporate companies that will help enable me become a great entrepreneur. Unfortunately, due to COVID, that kind of accelerated my timelines. There was a family business in Kuwait that went bankrupt. Unfortunately, it was a restaurant that we had to shut down. And I use this opportunity to step in and turn it into something that is viable. I took a look into research and data and even the stocks, and I recognize that the most successful businesses during COVID were food and grocery. So I decided to open a specialty grocery store in Kuwait. I have to admit, in my early days, I was super scared. I didn't think that I can do it. It was all foreign to me, and I truly believe that I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to be a business owner or an entrepreneur. However, when I was starting up the business and I was setting up the business plan and contracting suppliers and creating the branding and the marketing plan, I didn't realize that after 10 to 12 years working between ad agency and media agency and sales and e-commerce, I actually had every skill set I needed to become a business owner. So that kind of gave birth to my side business, Dukkan Alfreej. It's a grocery store 2.0 based in Kuwait. And the reason I say 2.0 is Kuwait is a small market that have grocery stores that operate in different fields. You've got really expensive, large hypermarkets that are super advanced. And then you've got the mid-tier local supermarket that's neighborhood run by the public government. And then there are private small kiosks that are spread all over the city. Usually the small kiosks are quite old school, pen and paper. If you're lucky, it may have a till that issues an invoice. I thought about going in and trying to disrupt this space. Why a kiosk? I did not have the experience in retail, been working in tech all my life. I thought this was just a good space for me to enter and disrupt. And when I built this business, I built it in mind of it being digital, being technically enabled. Everything in the business is tied to, we introduced an ERP system. I've introduced a lot of data and analytics to monitor the sales, the growth, the losses, the items that need to be replenished. I hired specific talent that understand how to read this data. And technically speaking, it is a very data-driven run business. And it's been a great learning experience as well. And on the back of that, I built an e-commerce website myself, which is tied into our inventory, which is also disruptive in its own sense. Because if you look into a lot of the larger supermarkets today don't have an e-commerce that's tied into their inventory. And it's been operating for about a year now. I have to admit, it's a huge learning curve for me. However, I think, one thing I'd like to highlight here is, especially for anyone who's watching, is don't ever doubt yourself. You probably know more than you think. All you have to do is just give it a shot.
Well, that's really hit home for me, since, it's really relatable for us girls to want to try new things, or actually having an effort outside of our comfort zone. So hearing it from you really helps us to gain more courage, maybe, and inspiration to actually try to go out of the box. Speaking of technology and along your careers, do you have any tips? Since currently I am, and probably many girls out there are starting our career right now, or maybe starting our undergraduate study. So do you have any tips for us to grow ourselves in technology?
You know what? Tech is such a broad term and it doesn't do any justice. A lot of women might assume that working in tech requires them to code, to build products, when in fact there are still other functions and operations within a tech company that any young girl who's interested in working in tech can fulfill, whether it's marketing or operations or finance and sales and account management. The only tip I have is find a field that you're passionate about and try it. You don't have to code to work in tech.
Well, that's really deep about passion. I mean, these days I've been thinking of having a career that I'm passionate about, and yep, hopefully we all girls can achieve our dreams and have a career in the field that we are actually passionate about, especially in tech. So, well, that wraps up our session today for Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. Do you have any questions for me, Shaima?
When are you going to start working in a tech company? Anything in the pipeline for you?
Well, actually, I'm currently searching for positions, tech positions, and I'm waiting for good news. And yep, I'm just waiting for a job position. I've been applying for several companies right now, and yeah, well, wish me a ton of luck, I guess.
I'm wishing you the best of luck, Natasha.
Thank you.
Hope
Thank
something
you.
comes through.
Thank you so much, Shaima. Well, do you have anything left you want to add before we close this wonderful discussion?
Trust your guts, ladies. That's all I have to say. Trust your guts.
Well, that's really, yep, that's 100%. We have to trust our guts. Well, thank you once again. It is such an honor to be here with you, Shaima, and I really enjoyed our chat today. Also, thanks so much to our viewers for watching. Stay safe and healthy. Goodbye.
Thanks. Goodbye.